whether it's New York or Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles, obviously there was still a lot of unrest in cities like Atlanta, still looting, still protests that became riots, or even during the day were riotous. But of course, so much focus was on Washington, D.C. around 6:45 p.m. Eastern time last night. By the White House, you had the President of the United States in the Rose Garden address the nation, first on George Floyd and condemning the actions by the police in Minneapolis specifically. That's how he started off. And then second, telling governors and mayors across the country this is unacceptable, these riots and the looting, and that if you don't do something about it, I will. And of course, that has caused this debate, yet another debate within the debate of this.
I thought the remark struck the balance perfectly between the need to acknowledge the injustices that have occurred and then also the sober responsibility that the federal government has to secure the communities of America. I think the president addressed both of those. The president probably has the most difficult duty to balance of all the leaders here. He has a sober duty to secure the nation against the violence that's occurring, and he also needs to hear out the voice of those who feel like they've been wronged. And by the way, Jay, that latter goal is best accomplished when the first goal happens. And you heard that message from George Floyd's brother. The comments that the president made really do reflect the reality that I'm seeing in the neighborhoods of Washington, D.C., where people of very different backgrounds are coming together and trying to find a solution. And I think that's what the president is aimed at. And quite frankly, Jordan, I think both sides of this equation that he's talked about are a part of that. You do have to engage in the dialogue. But the other thing that you have to do, Jordan, in order to enable that conversation, you have to make sure that the violence is put down so the very communities that are being oppressed aren't victimized by it.
I think this is the real problem here, is that there is nothing that the president can do right now that anybody on the left is going to say, that's okay, that's a good idea. That will squelch the violence, because that's what this is. We're dealing with violence right now. That is paramount. That's what this is.
If you're on federal highways, if you're blocking interstate commerce, and if you're destroying businesses, he gave governors and mayors a chance to get things under control themselves. And in many parts of the country, things changed drastically. There were still problems in the bigger cities, New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta. But in Minneapolis, notice you're not seeing a ton of footage out of there from last night. You may be seeing it from 2 days ago. But if you actually watch closely in the news how things are tracking, you had George Floyd's brother condemn the violence and say this must stop. And we need to stop letting these folks from outside the communities destroy their own neighborhoods.
I think that what we're seeing with the utilization of the legal acts that are available, we're starting to see direct action here, Andy, from the president taking charge, making a difference.
Well, that makes a difference entirely that the president has come out and said that he is going to potentially put the full power of the United States military into operation if the governors and the mayors do not comply with their responsibilities to keep the peace and the order. And we refer to the Insurrection Act. And that Insurrection Act was enacted in 1807. And as Jordan pointed out, it has been used multiple times by multiple presidents as late as George H.W. Bush in 1992. And I think by him saying that, Jay, he said something that a true president should say, and that is, if you don't take control, then the executive will.